Good afternoon and welcome back to the weekly wellness update. I'm your host, Gabe Osterhout, and we have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Eating Awareness Committee, and we're going to let you know about a great event that's coming up tonight. Joining me today is Julie Lee, one of our registered dietitians here on campus, and Jennifer Tallman, who is a spin instructor, a social media personality, and a blogger, and an author, too, from what I understand. So, ladies, thank you for joining us. And I guess first, we'll start with Julie. You know, not a lot of students know we have a registered dietitian on campus. So talk a little bit about kind of what you do and some of your duties.
Sure. That still kind of blows my mind because, Gabe, my face is on everything. It's very strange, but it is. So I am here on campus as a resource for students. Primarily, my role is to provide free and confidential nutrition counseling. So I see students for anything really that has to do with diet or food, and if I can't help them, I'll point them in the right direction. So students can get a hold of me. Like I said, my contact information is just about everywhere, but if you haven't noticed, it's on all the napkin holders in the marketplace. It's on all the table tents in the dining halls. And if you can't find it there, you can always go to the dining services website, binghamtonnewdining.com, and you can find my information there. But students can make appointments with me. Just email me, call me, and I'm happy to set that up.
There's also an Eating Awareness Committee. Talk a little bit about what that committee is.
Sure. So the Eating Awareness Committee is a committee of students, faculty, and staff who are dedicated to spreading positive body image, some awareness around eating disorders and disordered eating, and just promoting generally having a healthier relationship with food. And we do that primarily through programming, like tonight's program. The past couple of years, we've done a respect rave where we just literally have a black light rave, and the message is to respect your body. We do t-shirts and cups like you would get maybe at a rave, and we dance and just celebrate our own bodies. So that's a couple of the things that we do. And we also do outreach through tabling at events, and we're just here to let students know that there are resources for them.
We've heard that, the college years are formative years, and we see it all over about body shaming now. How important of a message is it to get out to our student body, and not only our student body, but, whether it's mothers who just had a child, whether it's kids in elementary school, how important is it to spread that message of not to body shame?
It's extremely important. I think that a lot of the students that I meet with now, in regards to eating disorders, may not be sitting in my office if it weren't for, if they didn't have to experience that kind of thing or watch other people experience it. I think that it's definitely imperative that we change the culture around our bodies and even commenting on someone's body about anything. Whether it's saying they're too skinny, they're too fat, whatever it is, I don't think anybody should have the right to comment on somebody else's body. If we can just start to get that message out, I think a lot of people, their struggle with eating and body image I think it would start to decrease.
And you lead us into tonight's program, as you mentioned, called Spinning Out of Control, My Journey to Health and Self-Acceptance. And Jen, you are putting this on tonight in the C4 multi-purpose room. You're having a talk from 6:30 to 7:20 and then a spin class after that. But first off, kind of talk a little bit about your journey. You're from this area, so tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here. I was born and raised in Endwell, graduated from Maine Endwell in 2006, and I moved down to New York. It'll be 7 years in February coming up, so I've been there for quite a while now. And basically, kind of long story short, my journey is I spent basically my entire life until about 21 and a half years old, pretty significantly overweight, a lot of food issues, just a lot of disordered eating, and that led me to be, about 110 or so pounds overweight. And then, something just kind of clicked one day. I was just feeling really miserable and, constantly comparing myself to other people. And of course, the plethora of being picked on in high school and, even post high school. And something just kind of clicked. I just decided I want to be healthy. I want to be really more than anything. I want to be an athlete. I kind of spent most of my middle school and high school dreaming about being an athlete, but I was always way too afraid to, be on a team of anything just because of my size. And there was definitely no there was no body positivity movement or anything, 15 years ago. We were kind of really in the depths of that, like, Weight Watchers and dieting and, fat is bad and, all of that. So it was just kind of my dream to be an athlete. And so I decided after my 21st birthday, after seeing a picture of myself, unrecognizable, I didn't even, kind of didn't realize I had let myself go so much. I decided that was it. And so I just kind of started eating healthier. I started moving my body, and it was great. But unfortunately, I didn't work with a registered dietitian. I kind of just did everything on my own, did a lot of research, and sometimes Google can be our enemy. So I definitely took it to the extreme. After losing 100 pounds, which would have been completely fine for me to stop at. I kept going. I lost about 30 more pounds, and I was pretty underweight for my height, for my weight. And then I started to experience anorexic tendencies, binging, over-exercising, and I suffered with that for about 2 years before another light bulb clicked, and I decided that life is too short to be so obsessed with how you look and everything you're putting into your mouth and, moving all the time. And so it's taken me a couple of years, but I would say I'm, more or less recovered. And now I'm a cycling instructor and a group fitness instructor in New York City, and constantly spreading, body positivity messages on my social media, and amongst my friends. And just to echo what Julie was saying, I think we're definitely kind of moving towards a movement of people stopping with the body shaming and moving towards that body positivity that I know I've wished for my entire life. So,
and it's one of those things that no matter where you go, food is involved. You go with family, there's a family dinner. You watch TV, there's commercials for all this fast food, and everything looks so fantastic. There's all sorts of diets out there. You mentioned Weight Watchers, and there's the Atkins diet and all this stuff. But Julie, question for you is, how important is it for somebody to really consult with either a dietitian or a physician and not just jump into the latest fad diet?
I think it would be really beneficial to anyone, because the thing about diets, in the sense that not diets as far as a regimen, but just our diets in general, is so individual. Everybody's got different food preferences. There's cultural differences, and just what's the circumstance of your life right now. And I think it's really helpful to have the input of a professional and the guidance of a professional to help you kind of put together what's going to work best for you. And the other part of that too is, I think that it's hard to even just go to your doctor to talk about it, because they don't really have time. I mean, who do you know that you can talk to about your diet for an hour? Most people don't have anybody that would want to listen to that. But that's what we're here for. And I think sometimes even just somebody talking about their diet, I see light bulbs go off. I didn't even have to say anything, but they just never really had a chance to talk about it. So I think there's so many benefits to meeting with a professional or even a health coach. Health coaches are out there as well, and they can provide a lot of insight as well.
And I think, Jen, you brought up a good point that you can go overboard. You went from, as you described it, being about 100 pounds overweight to anorexic. And that's kind of a big journey. Talk a little bit about that, how, you went from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, and it's actually really not an uncommon thing. I know quite a few people, especially through blogging and social media, who kind of have very similar stories to me. Went through a period of being significantly overweight and then went way overboard. And I think that the biggest problem there is that I didn't work with a professional, and I think that a lot of people don't. Maybe it's because they don't realize that an RD exists. And just like Julie was saying, like, you can't go to your doctor. Your doctor doesn't really want to hear what you have going on in your sinuses for 10 minutes, let alone your diet. So I think it would have been a much better journey for me had I worked with a professional. But especially to look at pictures now, I'm 8 years past my initial weight loss journey, and I would say probably 3 to 4 years past. Or 4 to 5 years past my lowest weight point. And looking at pictures now that I'm older, I was putting the PowerPoint together for tonight, and it actually it was making me cry, because all these emotions came back that I was suffocating at the time, every second of my day was planned at my lowest weight point. Every single thing I was putting in my mouth, down to chewing a piece of gum, would go into my food diary as 5 calories. And then I would think about what I could do to burn off 5 calories. And it was a very scary place. I would say a scarier place to be than when I was 100 pounds overweight.
And you talked about, and I think this is an interesting thing, nowadays with the internet and, on your phones and on your computer, the first thing people do is they tend to go to Google. And I've heard the phrase, we're Google doctors and we have our Google medical degree. But, while the internet has a lot of great resources, it can also be a big time detriment. Talk a little bit about your journey, because you mentioned you started off by just kind of Googling things.
Of course. And then like reading magazines and all of these things that are so easy to fall prey to. I'm a little bit of a hypochondriac myself. And so I've learned to stay away from Google because a lot of it is bad. But there was points in my lowest, weight point where I just remember thinking like, how can I do this when I'm like 50 or 60 or, like how can I go to a wedding or how can I get married and eat at my wedding? And I remember just feeling so lost and but not really knowing that RDs were out there and that I could reach out to somebody who was certified in this and could help me, just Googling what to do. And you come across forums and people are just, sharing their own experiences. And there definitely at least was a big push of like, you can hold on to that 1,200 calories a day. You can keep doing it. Just remember, like, the quote, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. Ugh. And I remember being like, no, I think food does taste really good and I miss it. And I miss out on so many things, going out with friends, enjoying time with my husband. And then probably like the worst part of all was, my grandma passed away, she was very worried about me. And so, just thinking about like the guilt of that, having family being worried about you. I can tell you right now, being skinny, there was basically zero benefits to it. And yeah, it was a really dark place.
And I think the important thing to remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, but everybody's built differently. Everybody's image of themselves is different. So, a lot of times we look at these people on TV and say, oh, well, that's the image of health. And it really isn't the case. Julie, can you touch on that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. And especially with, not especially, but also including boys. I've met with so many male students wanting to come in and put on muscle. That's been the big thing. And so many of them, they come in, they're like, I've been working out for like a year and I'm gonna eat my protein, but I've only gained like 5 pounds. And I have to have this conversation with them. Look, some people's bodies are just not built to put on muscle like that. And it's hard for them to hear, but that's just the way it is. Some people can just look at a barbell and their muscles grow. And then other people, they keep working at it and it still doesn't work. And even looking at bodybuilders, I explained, they look like that because they had to literally spend all of their time worrying about what they eat and their exercise. And they look like that for that night. And then as soon as they're done, their body changes right back. It's really hard to change your body significantly from its natural shape and form. So it's hard to remember when you typically when you think about eating disorders, you think about girls and all the pressure that women have, and it is absolutely there, but it's definitely there for boys too. And I heard a statistic recently that eating disorders in men is on the rise. Certainly isn't come close to the prevalence in women, but it is growing.
You're listening to the Weekly Wellness Update, and we're here with Julie Lee, our registered dietitian on campus, and Jennifer Tallman. And both of you kind of touched on this a little bit, that, a lot of times eating insecurities lead to other issues. Jen, you talked about how when you were on your scale, there were a lot of dark days, and that's kind of a correlation. Everyone's body image and their self-worth is kind of wrapped up together. So they go on these emotional roller coasters, which then kind of affect everything that they do. Can you talk a little bit about your journey? As you mentioned, we had the ups, we had the downs, and what that was like living through?
Yeah. When I think about especially the first core year of losing weight, also I just like to mention when I set out to lose weight, I didn't have a number goal. I had no idea like how much, weight I needed to lose. And so I just kind of took it day by day. And I remember like hitting that first like 30 or 40 pound milestone, and feeling great, like loving how my body looked, comparatively to 30 or 40 pounds. And not really caring about what the scale said. And that was great. I felt I could walk a mile, in 20 minutes. I couldn't have done that before. I could walk up a flight of stairs without getting winded. And then as it became an obsession, nothing was good enough. I was weighing myself 4 or 5 times a day. I would skip a meal so that I could weigh less in the morning. And that just seemed like, how can I sustain this for the rest of my life? And those were the really dark days because I felt trapped and I felt like I had to. I felt a big pressure because I was very vocal about my weight loss on like Facebook and stuff at the time. And I felt a big pressure from people to continue to be skinny. And that like, in a way, like all these people were watching me and like waiting for me to fail. And it turns out that there was actually a lot of people that were super worried about me. So I would definitely say like, in the very beginning, just those like little milestones, I should have kind of stopped there. And the really skinny days were definitely the dark days.
How important is it? And you kind of just touched on this. People who are on a diet, they tend to jump on that scale every day. And it's the ups and downs of, oh, I gained a pound today. Oh, I lost 2 from yesterday. And how important is it to not put so much faith in what that number is on the scale every morning? Or, even a recommendation of maybe weigh yourself once a week or something along those lines.
I think that's probably something that you would definitely want to work through with a doctor or a professional. I personally don't weigh myself. It holds too much and not and nothing to me, if that makes sense. And I can't go back to a time where I'm like letting a number, rule. But I would say, you have to work with your doctor with that. But the amount that you weigh should never be like the deciding factor of everything in your life. You have to base things on how you feel in general, and that's going to be different for everybody. There was a certain weight that I was trying really hard to get to, and I would have died getting there. And a doctor I'm sure would have told me that.
Obviously, it's important to have goals, but you mentioned you skipped meals, and I'm one that I have terrible eating habits and that I don't eat breakfast a lot of mornings, and people will tell me that that is the absolute worst thing. So, Julie, if I were to come to you and say, I don't eat breakfast, what would your reaction be?
Well, I guess it would depend on what your goal is, Gabe. If you came and said, Julie, I want to eat to have more energy. I get this slump in the middle of the morning and I fall asleep in my meetings. If that was your issue, I would say, okay, you should probably eat breakfast, because when we don't eat breakfast or anytime we go a really long time without a meal, and think about it, breakfast, if you don't eat it, then you have gone at least 12 hours without eating, because assuming you went to bed at a reasonable time and you didn't eat right before it, it's been a long time. Anytime you do that, your body's going to shut down your metabolism, because our bodies are very good at keeping us alive and not starving to death. So it's going to drop your metabolism. And in order to do that, some functions are going to have to not work that well, including your ability to concentrate, your energy. So if that is your goal, then I would definitely recommend having breakfast, preferably within the first hour, maybe hour and a half of waking up. Make sure it's a good combination of protein and carbs, so that you're not hungry like an hour later.
It's kind of one of those old things you always heard when I was growing up. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. As a registered dietitian, is that something that really holds true, or does it kind of depend on the person?
I think it does hold true for the most part. And I always talk to people, if the breakfast is not their thing, sometimes I talk to them, well, maybe perhaps having it in liquid form would work better. Because I understand not everybody wants to eat first thing in the morning. But really, when you think about it logically, our bodies really need the most fuel the first part of the day, because it's got to get you through the rest of the day. So most people, and even if you go to a restaurant, breakfast might be small, lunch might be kind of small, but dinner's the big meal, and it makes no sense when you think about it, because our bodies don't need that many calories to get us through the next few hours before we go to bed. But we really need that fuel first thing in the morning. So I suggest to people, if breakfast is not your thing and it's not in our culture to eat a big breakfast most of the time, then try to make your lunch one of your bigger meals at least, because you still got to good portion of the day to get through. But that's what's behind it, getting that metabolism going for the day, fueling you in the morning and fueling you at the right part of the day so you can use that fuel efficiently.
A lot of great advice. And, Jen, we don't want to give away your presentation for tonight, but again, you're presenting tonight at 6:30 in the C4 Multipurpose Room. For people who are going to come, kind of just give them an idea of what they're in for without giving too much away. You give too much away, no one's going to come, so we want them to show up.
Yes, please come. So I have a slideshow put together of just the different stages of my weight loss, and then just some bullet points to go over just some feelings, during each stage and what I was eating, what I was doing, just kind of where I was in life, and then, present day, and some great intuitive eating inspiration.
And Julia, talk a little bit about why Jen was the perfect person to come here and talk about this topic.
Sure. This is a fun story. So a few years ago, I was in my room at my mom's reading Women's Health, and Women's Health always features every month somebody who's really transformed their health. And lo and behold, that month was a girl from Binghamton, New York. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this, because I was going to school to be a dietitian, or I was a dietitian, I can't remember at the time. And I couldn't believe that somebody from my city, which had recently been in a Gallup poll as the second most obese city in the country or something like that, there was somebody in a magazine that really took charge of their health. And I reached out to Jen through Facebook, and I was like, I hope this isn't creepy, but I'm a dietitian, and I saw your article. Can we be friends? So that's how I came to learn about Jen, and we've been connected on social media ever since. And then last semester, we were brainstorming with the Eating Awareness Committee, what kind of speaker can we bring on campus that would give the message that we want to give? And I remembered Jen. And her whole story about losing the weight. And then I think what's really important that she's going to cover tonight is that turning point where she realized that it had gotten to a point where this is disordered eating, and knew that she had to compromise with herself to get to, weight that's still healthy for her, but that she's not constantly obsessing and it's not taking over her life. And I thought that was a perfect message for our students to hear, because so many of them are in my office for all kinds of issues around eating, and I think it's hard for them to remember that you can get to a point where you're healthy and you're still considering your diet and what you're eating, but not getting to the point where you're obsessing about it. It's not worth it.
And this is kind of an age where, people are really starting to become conscious. They're young adults now, and everybody's looking around. I know when I went to college, the phrase was the freshman 15, and everyone was worried about that. And, how to avoid that. Now it seems like there's much bigger issues that you probably deal with. If you had a message for the students on campus in general about their nutrition, what would it be?
I think my message would be, focus on habits now, because this is probably going to be one of the craziest, busiest times of your life. If you can learn to prioritize how to take care of yourself now, then those habits are going to take you through the rest of your life. And focusing on the resources that you have here to help you and guide you, and how to just put together good meals that are going to fuel you, and having that be your goal rather than trying to eat to look a certain way. That would be what I would say.
And we have just a few minutes left, but Jen, when people come and listen to you tonight, or if they listen to the radio today, what is the one message that you hope that they take away from your story?
I think it would just be to love yourself. To love yourself regardless of where you are if you feel like you need to lose weight, or wherever you are in that you're not going to be happier 100 pounds smaller if you're not happy right now. If there's other issues that are going on, losing weight is most likely not going to help them. And I wish I had known that back then, but I know it now, and so that's just trying to spread the positive message now. You have to love yourself now, because you're not going to love yourself 10 or 15 pounds smaller either.
Would moderation be kind of a way to go to? You talked about how you were overweight and then you were underweight. In that whole journey, did you find out that food is really about more moderation than one way or the other?
Of course. There's I saw a quote somewhere recently that was just like, barring legitimate food allergies, because of course, I even have some, but, there are people who actually have celiac disease and, lactose intolerance and all of that. But barring any of those, there's room for all food in your life. There's a time and a place, there's listening to your body, there's, depending on your activity level, there's all different kinds of things. There's no foods that need to be off limits unless you are physically allergic to them.
And Julie, real quick, I know that it kind of depends a little bit, but for people listening to this and they're worried about their calories, what is the appropriate calorie intake for an average male or female?
I don't know.
No? That's fine.
The thing about calories is we can guess. I have a equation that I can use. I plug in your height and your weight and your age and whether you're a male or a female. It's only a guess. We really don't have any way of actually knowing how many calories someone needs. So I get this question a lot. Students come in and they ask me, and I tell them, let's focus instead on just getting you some nutritious foods and focusing on what's the difference between, hunger and fullness. What does that feel like to your body? And just making sure that you get nutritious food in you, because wherever you're at now, if I just tell you calories, that may not result in what you really want. It creates too much obsession, and I don't actually know. We don't know unless I hook someone up to a machine that tells me.
But the main thing is don't obsess on a certain number. It's more about the process.
Exactly.
Great. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for joining us. Jennifer Tallman tonight, Spinning Out of Control, My Journey to Health and Self-Acceptance at 6:30, in the C4 Multipurpose Room. It's a free event. Great presentation from someone from our area. Come out and join them. And if Jen, can you just quick give contact information?
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Instagram at Jen Spins NYC. That's JEN Spins NYC.
And Julie, if somebody hasn't seen your picture all over campus and they heard this and now are interested, how do they get a hold of you?
Again, you can go to binghamtonudining.com and just click the Meet the Dietitians link, and you'll find my information there, or you can see my coworker, Alexa.
Excellent. Ladies, thank you so much. Some other health-related things going on and some other things to know about on campus. If you happen to see the library tower is turned purple tonight, it's been turned purple for the last couple of days. That's in observance of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We're trying to spread the message here on campus that domestic violence is a problem, and it's not just, physical. It can also be emotional, and that process ends with us. It's all on us to start these different things. Just like food insecurities, it's on us to change these patterns. This is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So for ladies, make sure you get tested. And if you find any problems, make sure you go out and get them taken care of. The main idea of this show is to spread as much health-related advice as possible, whether it's eating awareness, stopping interpersonal violence, stopping sexual assault. It really starts with us. We're the generation that can create this change, and we encourage everybody to do so. Also coming up this weekend is the big tailgate for homecoming weekend. The 20 to 1 peers, the reach